I'm so excited to introduce our guest speaker tonight. First of all, he is a brave United States Navy veteran for 20 years, I believe. So thank you for your service. And he is a long-time, off-and-on attendee of Lifelines over the years, and he works in recovery at a great program called 12 South. Do me a favor, give it up for Mr. Mike Maxey.
How y'all doing? I'm going to get myself in trouble. Yellowstone is in the house? Yeah! I love it. I do. My name is Mike. I am an obsessive, addictive, behavioral trait type person. Yeah. You like that? My disease has manifested in alcoholism, drug addiction, compulsive overeating, inappropriate sexual behaviors, gambling, compulsive overeating, and a few things that have bounced in and out. I didn't know what to call them, but I knew they were disease. I'm a sick puppy. Can anybody relate? Yeah. But you know, through this journey that we call recovery, a lot of things have changed in my life. A lot. And I was asked to speak on step 6 tonight. And to me, step 6 is, I won't say a cornerstone, but a shifting point in this entire process that we call the 12 steps. You know, one of the things I've learned about the steps is that, you know, it's an action, a process, an action, a process, an action, a process. And for every process, we have an action. And this entire program is about action. It's about taking that action. It's about doing the things necessary. I was once told that I am a character. I don't know why they decided that. But growing up, everybody always told me, you're a character. You're a character. Well, being a high school dropout, one day I decided that I wanted to become friends with a certain book, Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 3rd edition. I don't care if you like the blue one, the black one, the red one, or the green one. I like blue because it's my favorite color, but you get to pick the color of your choice. But you see, the beautiful gift is every one of them have the same thing on the inside, knowledge and education. So one day I decided to look up this word character. And if you're using it for one person, it means someone who plays a part. And what I focused on was plays a part. And one of the things that I found out on this journey is that I did not know who or what I was. Well, I knew what I was. I mean, come on, let's get real. I was a liar, a cheater, a thief, a manipulator. I did all of those things that most of us do. And I did all of those things because I thought I needed to do it to survive. So I built up my play. I wrote my script. I became the author of what I thought I needed to do and how I needed to do it to get through this thing we call life. And then one day I woke up, and as was stated, I had spent a little bit of time in the United States Navy. And several times while I was in the Navy, I turned myself in for alcohol abuse. And the beautiful thing about the military at that time was that if I had a problem with alcohol, that meant everybody I hung out with had a problem. And nobody wanted to admit to having a problem. So I can remember going up to my chief petty officer one day, and I mean, I was broke down. I'd had enough. And I turned myself in for alcohol abuse. And bless his heart, he told me to go hit my rack, sleep it off. He would cover for me that day. And when Liberty Call came, we would go out and have a beer and talk about it. What, you think that's funny? What else is an alcoholic supposed to do? You go out and you have a beer and you talk about it. So that was the character that I played. I grew up in an atmosphere in my home. My father was an alcoholic, a rageaholic, and a workaholic. I got the alcoholism and the rage. I didn't get the work ethics. I will openly admit I'm a lazy SOB trying to do as little as possible to get paid for it. And as long as the check doesn't bounce, I'll sit in my desk and do as little as, no, really. Oh, character defects. Yeah, a few of those start coming out, don't they? You know? So we've looked at that word character. And again, if we're looking at one person, that is somebody who plays a part. But you see, the other thing that Webster says about character is that all of us have our own character. People will call it characteristics. These are special things about you. These are the things that make up not so much who you are, but what you are. These are the things that people look at and say, this is what I see in you, and therefore, this is what I believe you are. And the great thing about it is again, going back to that dictionary definition, it's amazing how a synonym for character is morals. Oh, wait a minute. I'm an alcoholic, addict, compulsive overeater, gambler, inappropriate. I don't have any morals. Or so I thought. I could tell you I had characteristics. I was a liar, a cheat, a thief, manipulator. I have the privilege of working in this field as a drug and alcohol counselor, and one of the first things I tell my clients when we meet is that my biggest character defects in my disease were manipulation and coercion. And I was good at it. I was one of those individuals that we could sit down and have a conversation, and my character who wrote the script could guide you and direct you and convince you. And the beautiful thing about it is, and ladies and gentlemen, this is not, it's a statement, nothing more, nothing less. I was one of those individuals, and I'm sure you've all met one or two of them in your life, that when that conversation was over, you left, you walked away, you felt good. You had all this positive energy, man. All right. I got a connection with this guy. And about 30 minutes, hour later, you're sitting there thinking about it. You think, that? Oh, man. And you start realizing what I did to you. And you start realizing the journey I took you on. And you start realizing the things I convinced you to do. And you start realizing that I convinced you it was your idea to do it. And I was good at it. But you see, I've also come to recognize that the two biggest gifts I have as a drug and alcohol counselor, anybody want to guess? Manipulation and coercion. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. If that's your biggest character defect, how can that be your biggest asset? Because that's what this journey is all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about recognizing within ourselves what our assets truly are. In my disease, I was selfish. I didn't care about anything else. I woke up thinking, how could I get through the day? I woke up thinking, what could I get from you? I woke up all about supporting my disease. Because that was my character. That's what I was. So going back, again, what is character? It says the mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. So they were mine. I had to take ownership of them. Now, I knew a lot of people that had the same ones. And we kind of draw together. We form our cliques, our clubs, our groups, whatever you want to call them. And, being in the military, that was easy to do. Because it was real easy to find somebody else who all they wanted to do was figure out how to go out and get drunk. You see, one of my character defects in my manipulation of life is I actually had some boundaries. I had some rules. I had things that I had to have in my life. You see, I was a smart drunk. And one of the things that I did was I always made sure that I lived within walking distance of a bar. Because I was smart enough to know I didn't want to get a DUI. I didn't want that defect on my record. But you see, I was also smart enough to recognize, how many of you drank here in California? So y'all know bar time is 15 minutes faster than real time, right? Yeah. Because the state of California says when that bar closes the doors at 2 o'clock, it has to be empty. Got to get people like me out. But see, it was easy for me to leave. Because not only was my house within walking distance of that bar, I always made sure that there was a 7-Eleven, Circle K, liquor store, something. So that was my character to support my disease. So I had 15 minutes to get from the bar to the liquor store, buy a 12-pack. That's already 2 o'clock. Go home, drink a 6-pack, sleep for 2 or 3 hours, and I had a 6-pack waiting for me. See, I was a smart drunk. Somebody told me once the way to avoid a hangover is to stay drunk, so I did. Okay? And the beautiful thing about it is, again, part of my character, the role that I played in my life, is I would take a pint of whiskey on board the ship with me and sip on that till lunchtime. Because don't you know that if I start crashing, the real character, the demon, is going to come out. And I didn't want that to happen. So I'd hustle over to the enlisted club, and they knew me well. The door was about from that counter to here. And they would have 2 pitchers poured by the time I got to the counter, to the bar. And I would sit down and drink them and go back to the ship. And I would take another pint of whiskey with me. But you see, here's where things got real interesting. And here's where the defect in my actions, attitudes, and behaviors really started to show. Is I would go home about 6:30, 7 o'clock. I'd get off at 3, go to the bar, hang out till 6:30, 7 o'clock, and go home to my wife. And before I would open the door, I'd already be starting an argument with her, so I'd have an excuse to go back to the bar. So that's one of those defects of that character that I had. And that was the character that I created to support my disease. So when we look at this and we start, y'all did your 4th step, you did your 5th step, you're taking care of business. Everybody says the 4th step is so hard. It's not. I don't know if you've done it yet. It's not. Don't let something, come on, you've already lived it. You've already done it. But where does this list of character defects come from? It starts with step 4. Because that's where we start looking at all those things. And so we start building those things up. Moral character or characters is an evaluation of an individual. Say that 3 times with my new teeth. What? They're mine. I paid for them. Okay? Yeah. That was one of those character defects. I let my mouth go to, and it cost me. So, yeah, they're store-bought, but they're mine. Okay? And that's the beautiful thing about it. Took me a year to pay for them, by the way. All right? So it says, evaluation of an individual's stable moral qualities. So if we're looking at moral character, that means stability. Going back to that step, I'm honest. I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm kind, compassionate. My defect is I lie, I cheat, I steal, I manipulate, I coerce. I do all those things. Talk about defective character. I was one of those individuals, and I didn't even like meth. Okay, I was all about Quaaludes. I was all about low, slow, take your time, drool on yourself. But I was one of those, what? I was one of those individuals that, if I knew you just got a couple of rocks, I'd come over to your house and be your friend. And when you turn your back, I'd stick it in my pocket. And then I'd crawl around on that shag carpet. Yeah, back then it was shag carpet, usually green. I don't know why they like that color. So lime green. Talk about a defect. Okay, they finally grew out of that. So I would crawl around and I would help you look for it with tears streaming and sobbing and then I'd tell you I got to go home. But see, I was so screwed up. I'd go home and I'd call my buddy and tell him, hey, I just stole so-and-so's. Come on over, man, let's smoke it. Yeah. You think he didn't go back and tell him? defective character, right? Because that's what we do. Or let me rephrase that. That's what we did. Okay? We built this character of what we have become in our disease. You know, I think that's one of the gifts of step one. And I truly believe that when Bill W. wrote step one, it was actually step 1 and 2, but he was told to shorten them down a little bit. And for me, it was real easy to say, I'm powerless over this alcohol, this thing. How many times did I turn myself in? But I always manipulated my way out of it one way or another. But that life unmanageability, that was perpetrated by my defects of character. That was perpetrated by the things that I did. And a lot of people say, well, you know, you had a disease and you were this and you were... I made choices, ladies and gentlemen. I did. Now, they might not have been, I sit down and I cognitively think, and this is what I'm going to do. They were directed by my disease, but I made choices. And that choice was to create this individual that had character. See, I keep going back to that, don't I? So if I have a defect, what is that? Well, it's pretty simple, right? Something that's broken. Not might be totally broken, but something that's broken. Okay? Back to my buddy Webster's. All right? Defect, a shortcoming, an imperfection, or a lack of, as in a lack of positive morals. Okay? And I was so full of a lack of that it wasn't even funny. It wasn't even humorous. Okay? So, you know, one of the things I've learned on my journey is, so if I'm a child of God and I'm born in His image, yet I am imperfect due to sin, what do? You know? And I needed to figure that out. I need to find out how I was going to do that and what I was going to do. So this step says we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. That was kind of hard for me. Because to be entirely ready means I need to surrender, don't I? And I don't know, wow. I was raised in an alcoholic family with a lot of rage. I was raised in South Central LA, grew up in all the better neighborhoods, Linwood, Watts, Compton, El Segundo, Inglewood. My first social club was Elm Street Watts. And then this motorcycle rolled into town, and I fell in love. And that motorcycle was with a group by the name of Heshing, which I hear they're not around much anymore. They got swallowed up by the next one that I was involved with called the Mongols. And at 16, 17 years old, I was running drugs. Well, I wasn't running drugs. I was selling drugs through the drive-thru window of Jack in the Box in Southgate, California, across the street from the Southgate Police Department. Yeah, talk about character. You know? It was pretty cool, man. I kind of liked that. And a lot of things happened, and I ended up in the military. I ended up in the military because a judge over here in Huntington Beach looked at me one day and said, 4-year state penitentiary or military branch of your choice. The guy in the back corner is a Navy recruiter. Wake him up and get out of town. So in my defect of character, I immediately became an entrepreneur. Because at that time, and most of you won't even know what this is, but at that time, Thai sticks were selling for $25 a piece, and I could buy them in Thailand for 25 cents. So I did the math real quick. See, that's that defect. That's how we think. Okay? That's how we think. And it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. I'm going through a lot of things in my life right now. My wife labels it this way. Satan's got a bazooka pointed at my back. And you know what? Today that's okay. And I'll get into why it's okay here in just a moment. All right? But Satan has a bazooka pointed at my back. You see, I grew up under Satan's auspice and all of the things that I did. And so this entirely ready, even today, still scares me. Because it means I have to give up control. I have to surrender. And it's not just a little bit. I have to surrender everything. One of the things that was shared with me very early in my recovery, and I have a couple, 2 or 3 days, in recovery. My mentor, my pastor, says that I shouldn't say a couple, 2 or 3 days. I should be truthful. So, by the grace of God, April 10th this year, I celebrated 37 years clean and sober. Okay? And you know what? Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate that, but here's the reality of recovery. How many people got up before 7 o'clock this morning? Every one of you has more recovery today than I do. Well, that's the truth. Okay, haven't you heard that one day at a time thing? Today is the only day we have. Today is a gift from God. It is a blessing. If He chose to woke me up this morning and give me oxygen, I get to get up and do my day. And that's the beauty of this process, is that in the old days with that defect, I would find all kinds of ways not to participate in this thing we call life. And I was real good at not participating. But you see, there's some other things that go along with this. To be entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, we have to be honest with God of what our defects are. Well, why? God knows. Here, God, take them. I wish it worked that way. You know? See, because I know that God of my understanding can take me from this stage right now, put me at my house in my recliner with iced tea. Yes, that is my favorite drink. It should be yours. Okay? With my remote control in my right hand, my dog sitting at my left side. I'm very blessed. I have a 97-pound American Bull Terrier that thinks he's a lap dog. Okay? He's a beautiful little 3-year-old baby. And he really is just a baby. Okay? But you see, going back to, I have to be honest with God about what my defects are, because if I'm not, this doesn't work. I learned very early in my program that alcoholics and addicts like to keep golden thread connections to our disease. Why golden thread? Well, because gold is valuable. Thread, because you can't see it, and I know where it's at. And if things don't work, I can follow that thread back to my disease, back to my escape clause. See, alcoholics and addicts are all about escape clauses. Okay? So I would love to tell you that when I worked through the steps the first time, and let me tell you, I did them perfect. No? Okay, so I didn't. All right? I did them in a way that was, even in the uncomfortableness, comfortable to me. And one of the things that I've learned in this process, on this journey, ladies and gentlemen, is when it says entirely ready, it means we have to let go of every single solitary thing there is in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And the beautiful thing about it is, as we go through this process, it's not just about my stuff. It's about your stuff that I took on and made mine. And I'm not here to project blame on anybody in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what we do. Because if I can blame you, then it's not me. But to blame you, I have to make your issue mine. So I was speaking one time, and there was probably about 500 men in this room. Okay? And the beautiful thing about it is I've heard one other man tell almost the same story. And it's one of the great gifts that God gives us. He puts people in our lives that have gone through pretty much the same thing we have, so we can have a connection with another appropriate, healthy, strong human being. Okay? And there's a couple people here who know who that man is. Speaking in front of 500 people. And something came out of my mouth that I swore I would never say publicly to anybody. I'd spoken to therapists about it. Oh, therapists, they're fun. Nothing personal, but, you know. I went to my first therapist when I was 6 years old. I talk about manipulation and coercion. Oh, yeah, I love therapists. You know, I can play the game with them. But what came out of my mouth was a statement, and that statement simply was that I had been molested in the middle of a public pool, Southgate Park, Los Angeles. The public pool, an Olympic-sized pool, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to deal with it. So I went home and told my father. And my father looked at me and told me that I needed to stop creating lies. If I wanted to get attention, there were other ways to do it. So I think this is, even with everything else I'd already been through, this is where my defects of character really started to build. Okay? And then when I was about 14 years old, I had an under-the-table job picking up golf balls. Y'all see those movies where the guy's in the Jeep and picks up the golf balls, everybody gets stoned, he gets stoned. And everybody tries to hit him with golf balls. I did that for a living for a while. And at that job, my boss molested me. And he did a lot of things to me. And because I had been told before that I lied and it didn't happen, my disease picked that up and turned it into another defect of character. Because what I learned was that it didn't happen. Didn't matter if it did or not, I was told it didn't happen. And so the people that were supposed to protect me and take care of me told me. I created that story. So how could I go tell somebody what was happening? But in that process, I started doing a lot of other things. And my drug usage became very prevalent because I needed to medicate that pain. And so what I'm saying here, ladies and gentlemen, is I went through this process. It became a very simple thing. The day that I spoke that publicly, not to a therapist, but publicly, to God, to myself, and another human being, was the day that I was entirely ready to have the defects of character removed. So I know I'm running out of time here, and I don't want to go over because this is a planned, I could stand up here and talk another hour just because I like to hear myself talk, but that's okay. Today I like me. And that's the point I'm making here, ladies and gentlemen, because I've removed those defects of character. No, I didn't. And I need to remember that. You see, God removed them. And the beautiful thing about it is sometimes life throws a curveball. Satan has a bazooka pointed at my back. I'm going to college now. I'm 60 years old and I'm getting an education. I cannot spell education, but I are getting one. Okay? And the beautiful thing about it is I'm getting a Bachelor of Arts in Religious Sciences. Can you believe it? Yeah. Because God told me, wake up and go to school, boy. So I am. Okay? So I go back to something I read earlier, and I'm going to close with this, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm a child of God. I am born in His image, yet I am imperfect due to sin. What do I do? Well, for me, and you can take this any way you want. You see, I have determined that I, Michael Anthony Maxey, am perfect. No comments? I am. I'm perfect and by imperfections, and they are mine. And I get to deal with them daily. I was listening to the Fish one day, and I heard a pastor say that prayer is to take everything and place it at the cross. Good, bad, right, or wrong. Everything. Everything. Faith is to leave it there. That's the beauty of the process, is I need to remember to leave it there. Once I give it to God, don't take it back. And as a human being, as an alcoholic and addict, I like to take things back because sometimes I don't think I deserve. So what I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, is you do deserve. You are a child of God. He is your Father, and He wants nothing but the best for you. Okay? Satan will tempt, God will test. If Satan is in your life, the test is very simple. Will you draw near to God, Or will you stay in the mess? Become entirely ready. Let go. Or as AA says, let go, let God. Thanks for letting me hang out.